Welcome back to the patio for a Patio Pondering Podcast where we're after clear thinking in complex agriculture. Today's going to be a treat. It's going to be a treat for a lot of people that are in my friends list on Facebook. It's going to be a little different. Today I have Dr. Tom Kingery. And why it's important to me is because Tom and I were at Purdue together. We had classes together, we were in block and bridle together, and we traveled together on the 1992 livestock judging team at Purdue. And those experiences shaped how we think about agriculture, and maybe more importantly, how we learned and how we engaged when we were at Purdue. Today, Tom is at Western Kentucky University working with students who are coming into agriculture and then going out to teach agriculture. So, Tom, the creator of Screamin' Semen Genetics, welcome to the patio.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
We're at an interesting time of the year for agriculture. I'm sure they're in the heart of planting in Kentucky. You just talked about how you have graduation. You're going to be sending students out into the world in the next couple weeks there at Western Kentucky. But I'd like to ask Tom, when we were at Purdue, you and I were very involved, whether it was classes, block and bridle, or the judging team, or other things. When you look at students today that you work with at Western Kentucky, do you feel they have the same level of engagement, or are they interacting with agriculture and secondary education differently than we did?
It's much differently than what we did. I think and I've had people ask me that question before. Yesterday I was talking to the Kentucky FA Foundation about a similar situation or topic. A lot of these students today think their effort into their undergraduate program or the degree area or the concept area is something they'll all learn here. And a lot of them do not have that generational background experience like we did. So I've got to train them to develop into an ag teacher that can, wrap their hands around all these different curriculums and teach them how to work with CTSOs, 4-H kids and FA kids and homeschool kids and 504s and IEP kids in the classroom. And they don't have a lot of that generational support like I think when we grew up. I mean, I think we were that generation that, stayed out, all evening until mom and dad told you to come in the house because you're always out doing something, either playing or learning, or you just wanted to do something and learn for learning's sake to get the knowledge that you wanted. And I've really noticed since post-COVID that these students just don't have that drive like they used to have pre-COVID. I see it in my leadership students here on campus that are involved with the WKU Agriculture Education Society. I used to be able to just tell them what I wanted, turn them loose, and boom, it would be taken care of. Mm-hmm. Post-COVID, it's kind of like back to square one again. They're unsure of themselves. They don't have the confidence. They're not sure, what direction to go. And I think a lot of that is being altered by their lack of understanding of the atmosphere they're in and how they grew up. Parents don't demand as much for these kids as they used to. It's a gimme, 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 gimme society. What can you do for me? Well, when they get in my program, it's not what I can give them. It's what are you going to give me? You got to show me you can be a good teacher. You got to show me that you can handle these labs. I want you to do this strawberry DNA lab in front of me. I don't want you to tell me you can do it. You need to show me you can do it. But a lot of them don't have that background or confidence or that complexity in the agriculture content that we did. Not just because they didn't grow up on a farm, is that they just didn't get that exposure to it anywhere in a lot of places in that K through 12 system like we did. They almost taken a lot of the vocational part of these CTE programs out, and we're getting it put back in slowly into those hands-on, applied, practical knowledge techniques that we did in high school and in college too. Because a lot of kids will go through an ag ed program and not learn how to design a lab for K through 12 kids. They're taught theory and principle, but as far as the act of physically delivering that lab and make it appropriate, make the kids understand the material, it just doesn't happen as often as it probably should. And that was kind of one of the driving factors. I know I'm rambling on here a little bit. I taught high school, middle school, ag and Indiana for 15 years. And the thing that always bothered me was there needs to be a way to build a better mousetrap. Better trained than I was, better trained than the students I was seeing when I was getting student teachers. And when I went, got my doctorate degree, that was what I wanted to do. You got to be able to teach these kids to transfer that agricultural knowledge from their area of expertise to them, and build all those hands-on practical experiences back into the system. And I've got 2 classes I developed here just for that. That's all we do. I give them a lab. They write it up by hand. They cannot Google it. They cannot go buy a canned lab. They're going to do it in class, and I watch them write it. Then that next class period, after we've got all the the nuances worked out, they'll teach it to their fellow classmates. So I know that they can do it, and they know the expectation I want out of them before they go out and student teach. So it's just different than it was. I think we can get back to that. But I think the other thing that kind of hurts us a lot too is the social media context stuff. They're kind of buying into it more and leaning less on true knowledge in agriculture and more on hearsay and what's the new thing that's happening now. And that's not the way to educate at all. We got to go back and look at those philosophical and historical situations that we know are proven and teach that to these kids. So definitely not like it was when we grew up or we were in college, that's for sure.
Well, it'd be real easy for you and I to sit and kind of be Clint Eastwood sitting on our porch with our M1 Garand saying, "Get off my grass. You don't know what it was like when I was a kid."
Yeah.
But I think our experience in what we can talk about takes us beyond that. And I've got a lot of thoughts based upon your short rambling. As you were talking about preparing ag teachers, and I think about the ag teachers I interacted with in the 80s, that old ag teacher was kind of like an extension agent.
Mm-hmm.
The change in educational focus to passing tests, is that's what impacted the students you get in as teachers, where they're learning for the tests or not having that broad liberal education like we did?
Yeah. And the testing thing has been around for years. No Child Left Behind Act was never fully funded, and it got wiped out. And we've had a couple of revisions since then that, again, not quite fully funded. But a lot of that is, when you look at the administration at these schools, they want everybody to be college and career ready. Well, that's great, but we seem to be still forcing more the college side and less on the career side. And I'm a big proponent that, not every kid's got to go to college. I want a highly educated society like everybody else does. But doesn't mean everybody has to have a lambskin hanging on the wall. You can get educated in the military. You can get educated on the job training. You can get educated in apprenticeship. A lot of ways to get educated. And I think the schools miss that point because they're so ingrained in trying to get these school points so they get a good star rating from the governor. And most states are this way, that they're willing to sacrifice some other programs to keep that number up so they can show that they're an approved school. And that hurts a lot of kids. Those ag teachers we had in the 80s, they came from that old vocational school training and the educational training when they went to college. So they had that vast array of experience and knowledge going through those programs. These kids nowadays just get one side of that because a lot of the ag teachers that you have out there today are not from a rural area or not from a farm, but love agriculture. They're passionate about it, but don't have the experience to work with kids in that way. And I think we're getting better at getting that back into the curriculum. I just don't think that administratively, the short-sightedness on the administration pools is still leaving a really good chunk of these students in a place where they're kind of left wandering. I helped a county do some FA officer interviews yesterday. I took 2 of my classes to a high school. I wanted to see how the school ran their FA officer elections. And during the interview process, some of those kids were saying, they wish they had more opportunities in high school to combine their educational academic core requirements, their English or math or science, lead that into a more career-focused class or technical training class. The area technology center is way too. It's like an hour and a half away. They can't bus them there. But they wish they had more at the high school. They found that would be more valuable for them as a high school graduate than getting pushed into these, pre-college classes that they don't even want to be in. So it's tough for the kids, and I don't know if it's, I still don't think we're on the right direction. My opinion, until we put more emphasis on education and some other governmental spending ideas, education in this country hasn't been taken seriously for, generations. If they did, it'd pay every teacher in every state $150,000 a year. We'd have some highly qualified, really good teachers in these public schools and private schools. But until they decide they want to do that, we just seem to kind of meander along and not put the emphasis on the true part of education. Lowering class sizes, getting highly qualified teachers, paying them a decent salary, and letting them do their job. And that's the other part of it today is a lot of teachers not only have to teach, now you have to be a guidance counselor. You have to be a social worker. You have to be sometimes parent or co-parent. Sometimes you have to be a referee, and you got to be a special needs instructor, how to work with IEP 504. I mean, it's a whole basket of things that they're asking teachers to do. A lot of times because their skills aren't being taught at home. Parents are less involved in the education, and they spend so much time on those other things that by the time they get around to teaching, they're just exhausted, and they're expecting them to do miracles, and the work they do is, great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're battling and doing the best they can for the most part. But I think if we could find a way to alleviate a lot of that extra work, it would make our educational system so much more valuable.
We landed on 2-4 left, and I thought we were going to go on 90 right. So we kind of went a different direction. Education is important to me, obviously. My PhD, Kim's got a DVM. 2 of her kids graduated from land-grant universities. My grandmother had a master's degree in education. My mom had a master's degree in education. Spent time in the classroom. So education is important. But I think you're spot on where we have still that headache from the GI Bill after World War II, where we put so much emphasis on a 4-year degree. And where I got frustrated at with my youngest son when they celebrated Education Week, and every day they had a different theme. And one day was where your favorite college, and then another day was where your favorite profession. And they never gave permission for the K through 3 graders to talk about Ivy Tech, to talk about Indiana Tech, to talk about I'm going to be a plumber, I want to be a HVAC. It was all what college are you going to and what major you're going to have for K through 3. And I'm like,
yep.
Hell, when I was a senior at Purdue, I didn't have a clue what I really wanted to do. And they're expecting these 3rd graders who are like, oh, I want to go to Purdue and be a mechanical engineer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's different. When I go to high schools and speak, I share that same sentiment. My youngest son's a freshman in high school. I don't know if he's going to go to college. He's an excellent welder. If he can travel and weld, I've trained quite a few good welders out of high school and out of this program here that are making almost triple what I make here at a regional, campus university. I'm not at a land grant by any means, but they're doing well. Auto mechanics are doing well. HVAC technicians are doing really well. There's other ways out there that these kids can be successful. And when I tell them when I make these high school visits, college expensive. I mean, it's not like you're paying $800 in tuition back in the
like our first year at Purdue.
Yeah. It's quite a bit more than that. So, give the kids opportunities to go job shadowing more, do some co-op, do some SAE stuff with the FA program. Let them go out and experience some more what's out there, other than just showing them, the pennant that everybody wants you to see and what school you want to go to. But my son's kind of in that same position. I'd like for him to go, but if he can make, a good living and have a good career doing something they can go through apprenticeship or training program with, or be an electrician. Man, electricians are making a sightly amount of money right now. I'm okay with that. Because somebody's going to have to do it. And if not, we're losing. It's like farmers. We're going to keep losing these technicians and these career professionals. Then what are we going to do? I forget. I saw a piece of data the other day that the age of journeyman electricians, some other folks in that area was, creeping up quite a bit in age. The average age was like 62 and a half or something like that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And I thought that's the same thing I thought, that's really alarming, because I know of no one in any of the high school where my kids go that has even thought about being an electrician. And I thought, man, if that keeps creeping up, we're going to be in trouble pretty quick.
We've had some electrical work done around the house, stuff that's more complicated than I want to tackle. And every time I call someone, they say, if it's not an emergency, I'll get to you in 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, same here.
That was for putting in a circuit, running some wires, some conduit, making sure that it was wet environment. It wasn't just putting Romex through it. I mean, so it wasn't complicated, but I didn't want to do it. But that was a simple job. And they're like, that's 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
And I was willing to pay for it. Let me be really honest. Summer of 1989, before I went to Purdue. I just graduated from Northrop High School. I was going to go to Purdue. I'd already gotten a bid at Farmhouse, so I was a little cocky. My last words to a friend of mine was, good luck at IPFW, Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne. Yep. Too bad you're not going to a real college. And that came from my mother, and that came from my grandmother, and that was, go to college, and you got to go to real college. I mimic what you're talking about with your son with my sophomore, where he's been accepted to the electrical program at our local career center. He's also been accepted into a musical program. He's mentioned that he's wanted to become an electrician. He's talked about being a welder. And my DVM holding wife and my PhD holding self are like, okay, if you want to do that, we're right behind you. 20 years ago, I would have been like, what the heck are you thinking, Jolly? You got to go to Purdue. You got to go to Kansas State. You got to go to Western Kentucky. You got to get that lambskin so that you can do what you got to do. How do we get that change in both parents and administration, Tom?
The changing the minds of the parents, I think, is just basically getting over that stigma that anything other than a college degree is worthless. In the summertime, I go to Michigan, and I work with electricians that work at these area training centers, and I teach those mid-career electricians how to teach in their training centers. I don't teach them how to teach electricity. They know that. That's their content area. I just help them learn the art of teaching, how to communicate, how to deliver, how to ask questions, how to assess, how to stay involved with those types of lessons they're delivering. And I think getting society to look at those things as a valid career professional area is something that we've kind of lost. I mean, these schools have shoved this college thing down our throats for so long. Everybody's, if you don't go to college, you're nothing. Well,
yeah,
that's not true. Why would I want to go spend $75,000 to be a social worker and make $38,000 a year? That makes no sense. There's probably an alternate career path we could probably get that person into without spending that kind of money and still be willing to be a community, be involved citizen of the community and help people in the local areas as well. So I think we got to change that stigma, and we got to work at that. I hate to say it, that K through 12 level with these parents, and trying to get that changed, and reinforce those ideas that being a welder, good career. Being an electrician, good career. Being a plumber, excellent career. I was trying to find somebody to give me a bid on a pole barn. It's been over 30 days, and I still haven't got anybody to stop by the house yet. There's just not enough of them out there. So, there's construction and skilled labor folks like that that are fantastic opportunities for younger people. And I think the other part of that too is some of these younger students don't know how to go about getting involved in those areas. I remember in high school, we had opportunities to do some job shadowing. We could take college, and we had what we called a college and or career day. You could go make a college visit, or you could go to a weld shop or a sheet metal shop and visit, get out of school for the day. I think you had 4 or 5 of those in your senior year you could go do. And you took that opportunity and you could see what it was about. And I don't think kids nowadays, I know down here, don't have those opportunities. And I think if we start bringing those things back in and allowing some of those skilled trade people in the building to talk about their professions in the middle, at least down, middle school level, and start working their way up there, I think that would help out tremendously as well. Of course, you got family businesses where, the guys and gals that want to follow in the footsteps are going to hop in and do that anyway. But outside of that, getting new kids exposed to it, it's going to be really tough. I talked to a kid yesterday from the next county over. He went to the Next Gen conference that National FFA sponsors. And it's a skilled labor conference where they went to John Deere, went to Case IH, traveled over a couple different places, and it was geared more towards small engines, agriculture equipment, forestry equipment, and he loved it. He goes, I don't really want to go to college. Yeah, what I want to do it they were doing, I said, well, how do you do that? He goes, well, I'm not sure because everybody tells me I need to go to college. I said, well, advanced training is definitely something you need to look into, or a skilled apprenticeship program in that content area. He goes, nobody's ever told me that before. And this kid's 17 years old, going to graduate next year. He's never heard those words before. So I'm like, here's my card. When you get ready, next fall or this spring, give me a call, and I will work with your guidance counselor, and we'll see if we can't walk you into a couple programs. I know there's some in Bowling Green and a couple nearby that we can get you some after-school apprenticeship work in and get you trained on it and see if you like it. And if you like it, then we'll start looking at other areas to which you can go to and maybe get some more knowledge on those systems you want to work on. So
I talked to Travis Park, who was at Purdue when we were.
Yeah.
He's at North Carolina State. So this is kind of interesting that 2 PhDs in ag ed have been on as guests. It's pretty cool. We talked about how FFA has 1 million members. Are we missing expanding the influence that those students have because of the challenges that we've given or the constraints we've put on FFA teachers or teachers in general?
That's a good question. I think it kind of deals with your approach. I was still teaching, and when I was still teaching middle and high school, I always wanted my students to be involved, be competitive. We always want your kids to do well, right? I want them to do the best they can. Sometimes, if they're trained well, they're coached well, they learn the lessons from being in those training, those practice sessions. Those are things that can carry on through life, When I was in high school in ag class, I was the guy in the back of the room. I didn't want to say a word. Don't talk to me. I'll be fine. I'll take my notes. All my classes. Just leave me alone. Just don't call me, right? Then my ag teacher's like, you need to be on the livestock team. I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. You got to talk to people. He goes, yep, you're going to do it. And I said, nope, I'm not. He called my dad and said, I'll bring him home after school. And then he made me stay after school.
Yeah.
And Mr. Myers took me home 2 hours later and said, we're practicing tomorrow night too. See you tomorrow. The first 2 or 3 sets of reasons, scared to death. But by week 3 or 4, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. Then you got used to it, then it kind of got easier and easier and easier. And so I think a lot of the training that goes with those contests and those public speaking events are really fantastic. But some of those are groomed for specific students. And I think that sometimes you leave the rest of those students behind. And I don't want to speak poorly of any organization or career and technical student organization, but sometimes I think we overlook the foundational roots of why these things were started, and we're looking more for results-oriented students instead of career-focused oriented students, and that kind of bothers me a little bit. It's kind of like teaching to the test. Do you want to teach to the test, or you want to teach the kids really how to do something, to work through and plan a skill? It's great to do. You want to go on a test, and I understand the argument too. Well, if all those skills are on the test, you're really teaching towards the test. Yeah, but however, not everybody may score the same on the test. So they may understand the skill, the assessment, work through their problem-solving techniques, but they may not do well on your written assessment. So I think sometimes some of those CTSOs miss the mark. And there's some universities that are doing that today. There's some colleges and schools and departments of ag, the requirements are so high. You have to have like 2 years of calculus to get in to be an ag student, or you have to have 4 years of chemistry to be an ag student. And I don't know about you, but when I was teaching ag, I didn't use a bit of calculus. Now, I used plenty of algebra and geometry because we're balancing feed rations and we're cutting angles in the shop. That's fine. But I can't recall any time I used any shape or form of calculus or advanced chemistry, in my ag classes. So it's just a matter, I think you've got to kind of reach back and remember, all those individuals that, that got us to this point and those career and skill level things that made us reach this point, and bring that back to the forefront so we're not missing these kids in the middle. I have a coworker calls them the lost kids. They're not college bound, and they're not going into the military. They're somewhere they're lost in the middle. And they don't know where or what to do until, their mid or late 20s or sometimes their 30s before they finally settled on something. Which is it's a shame because we're missing a target with some of these students.
I would throw in a few more descriptors on that lost student. They're good kids. They go to class. They have friends.
Mm-hmm.
They don't cause trouble. They're not on a 504. They're not on IEP. They don't have police coming to talk to them. So they're easy students that don't cause trouble, and they get lost because they're not troublemakers. And they're not the, oh, look how great I am. I'm the valedictorian. I've got a 6.4 on a 4-point scale.
Yeah. It's it's the old thing where, good employees.
Yeah.
Good employees, hardworking employees, what do? They give them more work. Because the lazy ones won't do it, and then the ones who can't do it won't do it. So you punish all the good employees because you're working them to death. And, for long they burn out. And, what do you expect them to do? If we could just find a way to funnel that focus back into these students that, that need that opportunity, I think would be in such better shape. But you got to get them off this testing parameter. We want our kids to read, write, and do math, right? And do all the things we need them to do, be successful in society. But we also need to make sure they're career focused in a track which they can be successful on. And I like what they do in Europe. They've got, these career tracks. If you're not college bound, they'll actually put some of these kids on a more career focused track. So if they want to go into the police force or they want to go into emergency services, from high school, they start planning those career routes with classes that match that career profile. And by the time they get in that apprenticeship or training program, it's a much smoother transition. They walk into it a lot better, and it gives them, I think, a leg up. It's like certificates in our country. They want all these kids to get certificates now. Get a certificate in welding in high school. Get a certificate as a CNA in high school, which are great. It's a feather in a kid's cap. But unless you back it up with the appropriate, academic piece of that and the career exploration piece, it's still just a feather in a hat, and they either kind of use it or it blows away in the wind. Then they're back to square one again.
So as you're working with students that are going to go in the classroom, what techniques or lessons are you using with them to try and find that person that's kind of lost in the middle and help them find their way?
Yeah, and what I tell my students, it's the same thing I teach my kids. In order to be a productive member of society, I want them to be able to think critically. It's a scientific problem. Think about where you're at, the situation you're in, think critically. 2, act logically. Don't act on impulse, don't act on fear, don't act on anything else. Act logically that fits the situation. It's going to help solve that problem. 3, solve the problem. So if you've got these middle of the range kids, great kids, come from good families, good backgrounds, you've got to spend the time working with them and developing lesson plans in those classes that meet their career needs. Right now, we're still in the STEM-focused lab opportunity in ag education. We go to these programs and learn how to use microscopes and balances and scales and all this great stuff, which is fantastic if you're going to be a scientist. And it's great to learn those things if you're going to be in the math field or, research field. But those lost kids in the middle there, probably not going to go that route. So what are the lab activities that you can do that will help reinforce the skills that they have? So you got to do a skill assessment, number 1. I got 30 kids in this room. I got to know my kids. So I got to build relationships with them. Even the kids I don't like, I got to build relationships. see what their pros are, their cons, what are they interested in. Then I got to find some relevance. Okay. After they get out of high school, what career is going to be relevant to that particular skill set that kid has. Then 3, I got to add some rigor to it. I don't want to make it easy just because I'm an ag teacher doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I've got to add the rigor to it as well. So build the relationships, get some relevance, add some rigor to the curriculum, then perform and teach those lessons and those hands-on activities that are focused to those kids, right? And it's different for every kid. So if I want to be go out and be a DNR person and work in forestry, and I need some wildlife science or a firefighting science activity, so in my natural resources class, I better get those guest speakers in there to focus on that and have them go through some scenarios in class that meet some of those criteria. When I did that for my wildlife class, I had a lot of kids that had interest in taxidermy, right? Probably not a full-time.
We had a minor technical difficulty where Tom got disconnected, but no worries, we got reconnected and continued our conversation.
I think I'm back.
There you are.
I don't know what happened.
Let's take a little bit of a different tack. We've been dogging on students and kind of negative about the current condition with fair discussion. But what are students doing today that is better than we did?
I think the learning curve on technology is phenomenal. You think of COVID, and the best thing to come out of that was those students learning how to do Zoom meetings, team meetings, Google Meets. We had done none of that at the university level, K through 12 level at all. So they've gotten really good, and they know how to educate themselves on technology, electronic technology. It's amazingly how fast they can pick those things up. When my kids were little and in school using Chromebooks, I'm like, how did you learn that shortcut? Oh, it was easy. We learned it in school. I'm like, wow, that's impressive because I can't even do that, So I think there's things like that they're really good at now. I wish they would add more communication and a social presence, an individual in-person social presence to that, because I think that technology thing also keeps them distracted quite a bit. And it doesn't allow them to interact and communicate in person like, you used to do before you had all the social media stuff. So, but technology-wise, they're phenomenal, really good at it.
What gives you confidence about the students that are going to matriculate here in 2 weeks from Western Kentucky?
I think the unique thing that we have here is the ability to build a family-like atmosphere in this department, where faculty are easily accessible. You've got curriculum that is research and applicable to the concentrations we have here, to animal science, to meat science, to ag ed, to agronomy, horticulture, floriculture, pre-vet program. Kids get the opportunity here to do all those hands-on activities. They get to go to the farm, and do the labor out there to reinforce what they're going to do in that career field. And a lot of universities have stepped away from that. That individual one-on-one hands-on experience. They may go out as a class and witness, some of those lab activities, but as far as actually doing it, it's kind of cool if I go out to the farm and, I see 3 or 4 kids at the end of the hayfield waiting to get on the tractor to go cut hay because they've never done it before. They want to be agronomy majors, and part of their agronomy programs, you have to have so many hours out at the farm to qualify to continue in your coursework. So you're chopping hay, you could be chopping silage, there could be a day you're just fixing fence. But they have to have that experience before they move forward in their program. And I think this department gives that to them. So those kids graduating from here, although they may not all be farm-based or agriculturally connected, get all those experiences through our program that make them be very successful when they leave here. And I think that's pretty unique to us.
I think back to my children and the experiences that we've been able to give them. How are you instilling in your teachers you're sending out into the world to encourage inquisitiveness and problem solving when they get into a classroom?
Yeah, I have to teach them here because, they're not getting that at home. If you got one parent, two parents, a lot of kids are raised by grandparents nowadays when they're working their way through high school. And they don't get a lot of that tutelage like, our parents did or our grandparents did. For me, it was, my grandpa had a huge influence on me. So we start from the beginning, my intro to ag ed class, what it means to be an ag teacher, my expectations. And if you want to get your students to be problem solving community members, this is how you're going to do it. And it's just a matter of putting them in that same situation. Okay, here's the issue. How are we going to work our way through it? Give me some resolutions. Give me your resolve. Tell me the pros and cons of this solution. We could come to resolution and nobody be happy, but it is resolved. How are you going to work with those students you don't want to work with? How are you going to work with the administrators you do not like? How are you going to handle parents that hate your guts? Because that's part of it. Some parents don't like you just because who you are. You may not even have their kid in class and they still don't like your ag program. So we talk about those conflict management skills and how to work through a progression of things, how to leave a paper trail, how to communicate really, really, really well, not by text. We're talking phone calls and face-to-face communication. Let's go have coffee. Let's meet here after school. And let's work through these situations the best we can and see if we can come to an agreeable solution, because they're not getting any of that at home. You used to be able to count kids would go into 4-H. Man, they'd learn how to problem solve in 4-H. They had an animal, or they had a project, or electricity project. You had to do a series or parallel circuit, and you're trying to get this thing working right. And there's just not much of that out there anymore, especially in my area down here. So they're not given the opportunity to be put in those situations. A lot of them, if they're in that situation, they'll kind of look around and think about it, maybe ask for help, maybe not. Then they're just not quite sure how to move forward. So we try to help them get past that from the get-go, because once we can get that barrier knocked down a little bit, the other teacher traits kind of fall in line pretty quick.
That is so foreign to you and me, the not wanting to know, the lack of inquisitiveness, the lack of problem solving. And I'm not talking about complex problems. I'm talking about, I blew a circuit. How do I figure out why it blew? Just you and I will go downstairs. We'll go look at the circuit board and go, okay, this goes to the bathroom. And we're hardwired for that. What's happened in the last 40, 50 years?
It's a culture shift at home. It's like changing a tire in your car. My dad taught me how to change a tire. My grandpa did. A kid has a flat tire on the road. They call it. Who do I call? I don't know how to fix it. Who do I call? That's kind of the situation they're in. So we got to go back and refocus, get back into this problem solving mentality, or they're used to being coached through A, B, and C to get to D. And once they get there, that's it. They don't have any idea or clue what to do after that, because they haven't been taught or trained that way, and it's just different, and I don't know that a lot of them are receptive to working through those situations. When they first come in my classroom, I give them some classroom scenarios. Well, for example, in methods, we go through discipline training.
Oh, that's got to be fun.
Oh, it's a riot. It's a riot, because I give them, I have 100 index cards of every nasty behavior a kid did to me, kid or a parent. And I let them start teaching their lesson. Then I assign 5 or 6 of these discipline things to the other students in the room. And without questioning, they start acting like the discipline on the card. So it can be anything as simple as tapping your pencil. It can be rocking back in your chair, throwing a book down, or if you get the fight card's the best, because they don't know how to break up a fight at all, but those types of things, you got to train them to work through those things so they can expect their kids to develop that same type of, reasoning and focus, so they're able to handle situations when they arise. Because it's just not ingrained in them anymore. It's more of a response than it is an active applied research technique that we went through when we were growing up. It's just different.
So, Tom, how many of those 100 cards really came from little Tom Kingery and what he did?
Hey, I was an angel in high school. I didn't cause any trouble. I didn't cause any trouble. I just AI'd pigs for my SAE, and I was good.
There you go. And then you got to Purdue and blossomed.
Yeah. Yeah.
If a new listener listened to you and me, they would be pretty depressed with the conversation we have. What gives you hope about children that are graduating from high school in 2026 or will graduate from Western Kentucky in 2026?
For me, it's the process by which they're able to calculate, I think, quicker once they get out of college, the route or path they're going to take. If we can get them here, especially at WKU, get them through their coursework, give us time to build that problem-solving skill set, the confidence, the communication, the practical applied skills they're going to need to be successful, where they're going to be selling seed, going back to farm, running a greenhouse. We can get to that. That type of education will spread to those around them. Just like you want your ag teacher to teach that to the students, I think the graduates we get here, the feedback we get from employers is pretty much the same thing. Your kids can really talk well. Your kids can teach others really well. And these are non-ag ed kids too that teach really well. And they have skill sets that are better than kids we get from other schools because they've actually put it into practice somewhere. They know how to calibrate a sprayer. I don't have to teach them because they've done it here. They know how to calculate, work on balanced feed rations, that kind of stuff. Better than some other places that we've seen some graduates come from. So that once you get them ingrained in that mentality, our kids seem to do well there, and they're willing to share that with other people around them, which makes them valuable. As far as the high school kids, I mentioned earlier on, I think we're starting to turn and go back to that hands-on applied approach a little bit more. The kids that are probably going to college know that already. The kids who aren't probably know that already. Again, it's that middle group we really need to focus on and try to help them find their path quicker, so we can get them in a place where they feel confident, they feel comfortable, and they know that that's what they want to do. So it's not all gloom and doom for high school kids. I don't want to put that out there, much more than we already have. But I think we need to go back in this country and reteach some of those things, those civics things, what makes a good, positive community member, and, what careers are associated in working with those types of people, and how they can benefit from being involved in those fields as well, that I think we're missing the point. My kids have never had a civics class in high school, which, blows my mind, Also, they don't know how to write their name in cursive. That blows my mind too. But
oh my God, when my son signs his job form for Boy Scout stuff, it's John. I'm like, okay, we're going to take some time here. You're going to learn how to J.
Yep. I went to the store, got the cursive letters. I sat them all down on Wednesday night. Okay, it was Dr. K's teaching night. My kids, we learned how to write her name. We learned how to balance a checkbook. That Scooby-Doo, I call it Scooby-Doo math they do nowadays. I taught them the old way, so they had two options to do their math. But, we just got to go back to make sure we're teaching kids and not just teaching content. So they're prepared when they're ready to get out of that building. And like I said, I think we're going to come back around. Education goes in cycles, and I think we're coming back around to that now.
I interviewed Dr. Trey Kellner. He's a swine nutritionist at AMVC, which controls, 30, 50, 100,000 sows. And he's in charge. He's a managing partner. He's in charge of nutrition. I would say the bulk of our conversation had nothing to do with the intricacies of swine nutrition. We didn't talk about amino acids. We didn't talk about mineral content. We didn't talk about feed curves. We didn't talk about feed budgets. We spent a lot of our time talking about what he called soft skills. Mm-hmm. How do you talk to your employer? How do you talk to your employee? How do you get across a challenge? How do you get across praise? How do you do your job? Because in a lot of what we do outside of education, the technical stuff is easy. I got a chart, make sure it's within this, or it fits here, it fits in a box. It's all the stuff around that I think we're missing. And I think we've alluded to that when we're teaching towards a test, and we're worried about grades, and we're worried about 504s and IEPs, and make sure that we're forgetting those soft skills that you and I learned. I don't know whether it was in Block and Bridle or our FFA or when you were at DTS and I was at Farmhouse. We're missing those soft skills. At least that's my assessment as I interact with teenagers.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Kentucky is all those soft skills are built in the ag education state standards. So
okay,
whatever class you teach, whether it's animal science, pre-vet, the advanced life science courses, all those have got like 36 key essential soft skills. So they have to give speeches, they have to communicate, they have to go through a job wreck scenario, all those things. So the high school level, I think this state does a pretty good job, especially on the ag ed side, of working through that stuff. On the college side, if they haven't quite gotten to that point yet here, we just kind of go back to the basics. When I send them out to go observe, we go over the basic things that I look for those kids to do when they're out observing. You got to show up on time. You got to dress appropriate. You got to make sure you say the right things. You got to have a positive attitude. You got to make sure you're knowledgeable about what that lesson is going to be about that day before you go into the ag ed classroom, so you can help tutor kids if that's requested of you. So they kind of know going in, what those things are and how to ask questions. Okay. And I also teach, one of the things with teaching methods too is, and I learned, through teaching for so many years, when you send I call them attaboy and attagirl cards, you got to learn how to give praise to your kids, your students. Because parents, when you get a card or a letter sent home from school, they assume it's the worst, right? And I didn't figure it out till about year 5, what if I just got some index cards, and put your name, great job in animal science class today. Look forward to seeing them next week in class. And I started sending them home, a couple a week. Kids behaved well, participated, brought up a key point in class that I thought was really cool. I'd get a card, go down to the office, put it under the automated stamp machine, send it out. And then a couple of years later, you start going to these graduation ceremonies at these students' house, and on the refrigerator, are all Mr. K's, attaboy, attagirl cards, I was like, and the parents will tell you, that made a difference in my kid, he or she hated to go to school, but when they got that card, it wasn't as bad. They still didn't like it, but at least they started to realize going to school was kind of an important thing. Maybe we need to stay there and do what we can do while we're there. So, those soft skills are, and he's right, because a lot of times I'll get calls and, that these companies looking for internships, and they're dying just to get some people that will just show up on time, be drug free, that will follow instructions, and they'll pay them $20 an hour. You just gotta, they're just looking for people that, will do those soft skill things really without having to be, forced to do them on their own. So,
can you tell me about one or two students that hit your program and they had the soft skills, they had the inquisitiveness, they had problem-solving skills, and you were excited about where they were going to go after they left Western Kentucky?
Oh yeah, I've had some. I will say this, the ag ed kids that have been through my program in the last 15 years have all been pretty good. I mean, everybody puts out, a few duds in their lifetime. That depends on how vested the kid is in the program, right? So I've been pretty lucky that I've got some really high quality kids come through that were just phenomenal. I didn't, they'll tell you they've learned stuff from me, but it's really, I've learned more from them than they have from me. I've got one young man that left, and he went and taught ag for 7 years. While he was teaching, he got his master's done. He got his EDS done. He just finished in his first year as a college professor. He's 26 at another institution. I've since stolen him from that institution. He'll be working with me here this fall.
Okay.
And he's phenomenal. I've got ag teachers that are teaching in a 9 through 12 classroom that are just phenomenal. And the nice part about that is the transference from those kids. And I see their students come here And I will ask them, how'd you get along in high school program? How's Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so? And what are some of the life skills they taught you? And generally that's part of it, learning how to communicate, learning how to show up on time, learning how to do what I'm supposed to do, learning how to think on my own, and not be asked to clean the shop after I make a mess, to clean it up without having to be told to do it. And those types of students that leave here, they're going to be great no matter where they go. And some of them are at state positions here in Kentucky in the government. Some are at state team ag ed positions within the state for the ag ed community. We've got a lot of them around the regional Bowling Green area that are supervisors or regional marketers for some agriculture companies as well. So those kids get you really excited because that infectiousness, like in my Ag Ed Society club, you get one of them in there, then the rest of them pick up on it really quick, especially if they don't have a lot of those soft skills already. They just kind of absorb that mentality from them. Then it just kind of, it's a domino effect. Mm-hmm. And it's great because it's less work that I got to do. And they see one of their peers acting that way, and it kind of changes their outlook. Well, maybe I should act that way too. Or what can I do to get to that point? Because that looks like they're doing pretty good to me. So they'll want to work towards that as well.
So you've been at Western Kentucky how many years?
16.
16. So you're 15 years in the classroom, 16 at Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
What gets you out of bed and make sure that you're at your office at 8 o'clock every morning?
For me, it's my students. It goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. I always wanted to find a better way to build a better ag teacher. One that's committed to students, committed to hands-on learning, committed to understanding the educational system, that know how to train kids to know how to skillfully train kids so they've gotten a career out of high school. When I came out of my institution, I had tons of theory, tons of applied research stuff. And I think I only had 2 ag ed classes in 4 years. The rest of it was content classes. So the skill and art of teaching is what I want them to understand. So when I got here, there were 2 ag ed classes. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that again. So every year they have a class with me. For every semester they're here, they have a class. So they can't escape me for the most part. And I did that because I want to train them every semester, and each semester I've set up is designed for them to learn the skill of being a teacher in a classroom of 30 kids, how to talk, how to change your voice, your volume, your pitch, when to yell, when not to yell, okay, when to use cues for the classroom, how to design assessment that meets all the 504 IEP kids without making 12 tests for 30 kids. Okay, that's going to save you some time, but still give you some valuable, data on a grade set, so that kid's progressing in your classroom and growing. So they can't escape me. And I wish somebody would have done that for me in my undergrad program. Would have said, "This is how you need to talk. This is how you need to walk. You don't want to sit at the desk. You're not up there just hitting a PowerPoint and talking. That that lasts for 8.5 minutes. Then what do we do? Yeah, they're done after that." I want them to be actively involved in the classroom where the kids are excited to come to ag class. They know it's going to be something new and creative and interesting that makes them think, that's kind of cool. I'd like to do that, or I like this idea, or I want to do that. I want to start my own lawnmower business or what have you. And that's what gets me out of bed because I see and I don't want to be morbid. I don't have a lot of time left on this planet. So the more kids I can train to be high quality, high achieving, exciting, creative ag teachers, the more I want an opportunity to do so. So as long as I can, as long as I'm able, I think we've done a pretty good job. The NACTA, North American College and Teachers of Agriculture judging conference is every year. And 2 years ago, they started an ag ed teacher contest. So we went up to Idaho and competed in that, and we ended up being the second highest school in the nation. Minnesota beat us out, stinking Minnesota. Last year we went to Amarillo and did the same thing, and we were second again. So Second in nation, 2 years in a row is not bad, I don't think. Not that I didn't know my kids couldn't teach, but it kind of validated what we were doing to administrators that may not see ag ed as, as important as an animal science or a pre-vet program or a plant science program. But that got their ears to perk up a little bit because, we're a regional institution, and we're knocking out the Langerhans like you couldn't believe, and it's not that I have a magic formula, but all those years in the classroom that I spent teaching, I can share all those experience with these guys and gals, the do's and don'ts, all those things, and they pick up on it. And when they graduate here, they're pretty good. And I tell them, when you get done with my program, you're going to be good, but you won't be great for 5 years. You need to go do the daily grind in the classroom, learn discipline better, learn management better for classroom procedures, learn how to teach all these different classes, interact with parents. By year 5, okay, you should have a pretty good handle on those things. And after that, you should be on cruise control. And you will be great. And most of the time when they hit year 5, man, they just take off. And that's where I like to get the call. Hey, Dr. K, what are you doing? Not much. My 7th year, I'm still teaching. I'm like, super great. What's working for you? Can I invite you into my class to talk to my undergrads to see what, what you love about your career and your profession? And I always, bring them back to class, and they can share that with those guys and gals, and their enthusiasm for teaching and education. You get one in there, and then all of a sudden it's contagious. The next one's like, I want to be like that, or I want to teach like that. And like I said, it's a domino effect. And then after that, it's pretty easy teaching for me.
Well, Dr. K, you have a feather in your cap that our alma mater, Purdue University, doesn't have. Purdue no longer has an ag education school. Right?
Yeah, I saw that come across my desk a few weeks back. Yeah, I was really concerned.
I've talked to people. The administration in agriculture is trying to figure out how they can maintain the program because it was kind of combined with ag communications and state laws. So it's not dead.
Yeah. But
there's no dedicated department anymore.
Yeah, that concerned me too. And they need to get back to, okay, and I'm a little selfish when I say this, they need to get back to training ag teachers to be good teachers in the classroom. Teach them the skill and art of teaching, and they'll have more of those kids in those classrooms stay. And I think they'll build a better, portfolio of what product they're producing. And I think that would help them, be a little more progressive in their approach to getting, an organized, department back together. But until they hit that benchmark point, I don't know that, I don't know if it's going to get any better. And I'm kind of guilty because of the Southern Indiana kids in FA District 10, 11, and 12. I recruit hard in those districts because it's a long drive from, Huntingtonburg, Indiana to Purdue, right? And I can get those kids down here because I'm closer. Then I keep them here for the 4 years, and I send them back across the border. And I had a principal call me last year who met one of my grads from Indiana at a conference. She goes, how do I get one of those? Our ag teacher is not like this at all. How do I get one of those? I said, well, do you have an opening? She goes, no, but I can make one.
Well, there's another advantage that you have bringing those kids from Southern Indiana.
Yeah.
There's no longer a language barrier.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And the basketball thing, it doesn't, it's not around anymore either. So, yeah. 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 I get tons of kids from Southern Indiana, Illinois. I got a girl from West Virginia here now. I recruited her. And I usually get a bunch from Tennessee as well because I can hit those schools on the northern side of Tennessee pretty easy too. But I'm lucky. I get some really great kids that want to be high quality ag teachers, and when they come through and they're finished, they're usually pretty good. So if they're not, I tell them. If you're not, then if I hear about it, I'm coming to school and we're gonna work it out because we need a little more training. I'll help you out. We'll get you there. So. Yeah.
I'm short, I'm fat, and I'm feisty. I'll take you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. We'll get you one way or the other.
So we've come around. We were awful negative. We were get off my grass. This is different when I was a kid. To optimism, some enthusiasm for the students you're putting out. So I'm going to leave before we get into my standard questions. One of my favorite memories of Tom Kingery.
Oh no.
Yeah, this is a good one. We were at the Animal Science Farm at Purdue, and we just did sheep. And we're sitting on the side of the hill with pine trees behind us, and we're doing reasons as a group. And Dr. Mike Neary was sitting and listening to us, and Tom Kingery said, "When stung, slung, and hung, this lamb would project a prime carcass." And all of us universally said, "What the hell did he just say?"
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was a creative little feller back in the days.
Yes, you still are, Dr. K. We had some fun times at Purdue.
Oh,
we
yeah.
won't talk about the block and bridal parties. And,
No.
Those nights when Jane Barton or Jane, not her married name is Barton.
Richardson.
Jane Richardson and Kathy Batt bailed us out.
Yep.
And I won't talk about the all the Wrangler tags that we might have had hung on our wall because, that was what you did in 1990.
Yeah. And we're glad there weren't any cell phones at that time. So, yeah.
Oh, Jiminy Christmas. We'd be in trouble. Well, Tom, we've had a great conversation. I end every one of our podcasts with 5 questions, and it's really cool to see the different answers. So we're going to jump right into them. What's one lesson from ag that you carry with you every day?
Work ethic. If you want to be effective, you got to work.
If you want to be effective, you have to work. That is great. If you could have coffee with any historical figure in ag, who would it be?
Wow. Boy, that's a good question. The one person, I've been doing some genealogy work. My dad, my grandfather, all the way back to 1700s. They've all been farmers. There was a Calvin Kingery I have a picture of, and he was a farmer. And he's just got I not only have the picture of him, but he looks like a hardworking, honest, traditional colonial farmer. I've always wondered when I look at that picture what his life was like and what was going through his mind. So if I've had one guy that I would really like to sit down and just pick his brain, it'd be him.
That's a good one. What is one quirky or underappreciated thing about ag more people should understand?
One quirky or underappreciated thing about ag? Oh, wow. I think the underappreciated part is, the effort it takes to get, food to your table. I don't think people appreciate that near enough. It's convenient to go to the store and buy it. It's not so convenient to stay home and grow it. And I think if more people realized that before they bought something, they'd have a little more appreciation for it when they ate it.
What is one of your favorite ag-related tools, products, or innovations?
Oh, wow. The best, I don't know if it's really an innovation or not. Well, I don't know. That's not really a tool either. Well, that's another good question.
We'll throw it out.
When I was still farming, I had a finger harrow that I loved. We had it behind an old Alice Chalmers. No, it was a Kraus disc. I couldn't afford a rolling basket, so we just had this harrow finger in the back. And you could change the depth and the height just by moving this bolt pattern. You squeeze the trigger and you lifted the bolt. You could change how aggressive or passive it was. And I thought, for something that is so simple and easy to build, how much of a difference it made on, prepping that seed bed before you ran the planter through it. I mean, it was gorgeous. Now, it didn't quite, get every dirt clod into a powder like a rolling basket would. But I thought, for a piece of equipment that is so, easily constructive, it's super simple, but man, that's kind of brilliant, just flattens and levels that ground out pretty smooth. So.
What is one small change that could make a big impact on agriculture's future?
Word of mouth. Agriculturalists are terrible at spreading the good news about agriculture. We call it, agvocating down here. We need to be more vocal about what we do to everybody, so they have a better understanding what agriculture encompasses. We used to talk about, the ag curriculum is not just cows, sows, and plows anymore. Well, we need to tell those people what it is about, the great innovations in technology and agri-science and genetics and all these things that make, food, fiber, and agriculture, forestry, natural resources, available to them so they can use them in their daily lives. But we're just not very good at shouting that off the rooftops. I don't know why that is, but it just seems like if we did more of that, maybe we'd have a better understanding. Communities in general would have a better understanding about what it is and why it's important that we lift it up instead of condemning it all the time. Because usually when you hear something about ag, it's a bad thing. This pesticide or this chemical or this seed or this or that unless you watch RFD TV, you don't see a lot of positive agriculture stuff. Our field day out here, I invite the local news channel to come out during our WKU field day. We have about 1,000 kids from all these high schools come in, compete in different contests like livestock judging, dairy judging, public speaking, those types of things. Just so we can let people know what agriculture is really about. Because most of them just don't have a true definition of what it is and really how it impacts their daily life.
Well, Tom, I appreciate our conversation. Like I said, when I was preparing this, it was bringing back a lot of memories. A couple we shared off air that didn't need to be shared with the public.
Yeah. That's good.
But you think back to our days at Purdue, we've got a cadre of people that I'm sure if I picked up the phone and I said, hey, Tom and I are going to be in Greenfield, Jane and Kathy, you want to have lunch? They'd be like, we'll be there early.
Yeah. Maybe Marcy could show up too.
Yeah, I'll throw Marcy in. Maybe she'd bring me some MGD that she bought me when I was 18. If people want to learn more about Dr. Tom Kingery and the program at Western Kentucky, where do they go?
Yeah, just get on your Google box, your Google machine, your interwebs, whatever you want to hop onto, and type in Western Kentucky University Agriculture. You'll see all the degree programs available that we offer here. We're campus about 16,000 students. So if you've got a student who doesn't want a 60,000 person student campus, but still wants a high quality ag degree that's practical applied research that you think will fit their career path, click on any of our names there, then we can get in contact really quick. And we usually call. We'll email first, and we'll follow up with a phone call. And we're giving farm tours and campus tours all the time around the year. So usually the professors will do it one-on-one with you, as long as you schedule a date and time in between classes and stuff. And we'll get you down here and we'll tell you all about the program and stuff.
Well, listeners, here is another example of where you do not know where agriculture is going to take you. You took Tom Kingery from an FFA student that didn't want to participate to judging livestock to Purdue and now forming the lives of future agriculture teachers at Western Kentucky.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. Good to speak with you. Good to see you.